Old Farmer Briggs had lived on the outskirts of Pine Hollow for so many decades that the land felt as familiar to him as the lines on his own hands. But even with all those years behind him, years of quiet forests, changing seasons, and the low comforting presence of his loyal old dog Rusty, nothing prepared him for the morning, when everything seemed to shift. Starting with Rusty's sudden obsession with a twisted elm tree standing near the back fence line. A tree Briggs had passed 1,000 times without giving it a second thought, yet Rusty froze in front of it that day, as though facing an invisible enemy. His ears stiffened, his tail dropped, and a low rumbling growl rose from his chest. The kind of growl that told Briggs there was something deeply wrong. At first Briggs thought it was a raccoon or maybe a fox scenting the bark, but Rusty crept closer, nose twitching, eyes fixed on the trunk with an intensity that made Briggs uneasy. And then, without warning, Rusty lunged forward and began scratching at the bark with frantic desperation, claws ripping tiny curls of wood free. Briggs shouted, grabbed the dog by the collar, and dragged him away. But Rusty fought against him with the kind of primal fear dogs show only when they sense something unnatural. Briggs scolded him lightly, confused and slightly unsettled. But the rest of the day, Rusty remained restless, pacing near the window, staring toward the woods, whining under his breath as if something out there whispered his name. By dusk, Briggs tried to settle things by going out for their usual walk. But the moment they neared the elm again, Rusty's body stiffened and he tore free from Briggs' grip, scratching wildly at the trunk once more. This time Briggs noticed something strange. The bark sounded wrong beneath Rusty's claws, not like rough wood, but like something softer, something disturbingly close to skin. Briggs stepped closer, hesitantly touching the bark, and jerked his hand back instantly because the surface was shockingly cold. Colder than winter ice despite the warm evening air. That night Briggs tried to sleep, but a faint scratching noise kept waking him, a sound that wasn't coming from Rusty, but from outside somewhere near the woods. At one point Briggs lit a lantern and walked out onto the porch. In the distance he could swear he saw the twisted elm slightly moving as though swaying in a wind that didn't exist. Rusty pressed against his leg, trembling. The next morning everything escalated. Rusty bolted for the elm again. This time with such force Briggs nearly fell trying to keep up. And when the dog reached the tree, he attacked the bark with a frenzy Briggs had never seen. Claws tearing deep gouges until suddenly an entire chunk of bark fell away. What lay beneath wasn't wood. It was pale, smooth, shaped. Scream caught in his throat as his old eyes widened in disbelief. For beneath the bark was a human face. Features contorted in frozen terror, lips parted as though gasping for air in the final moment of life. Rusty barked and scratched harder, exposing more pale shapes. What looked like parts of other faces twisted and melted into the tree's trunk. Briggs stumbled back, heart pounding so violently he thought it might burst, and the forest around him seemed to hold its breath. The face beneath the bark slowly exhaled, a whisper of cold air blowing across Briggs' skin. And its eyes, cloudy, lifeless, yet somehow aware, fluttered open. Briggs. It breathed. The old man fell backward onto the dirt, scrambling away as Rusty barked fiercely, standing protectively between him and the tree. Voices began whispering from within the trunks off at first, then rising, overlapping, forming dozens of layered cries that all seemed to call Briggs' name. He wanted to run, but his legs trembled too violently to move. And the ground beneath him began to shift as roots pushed upward, writhing like serpents trying to reach his feet. Rusty lunged, biting the roots, ripping them apart with furious desperation. And Briggs finally found the strength to get up and stumble toward safety, dragging Rusty with him as they fled into the open field. But even from the farmhouse porch, Briggs could feel the forest watching him. He kept glancing toward the tree, half expecting it to uproot itself and crawl toward him. For hours Rusty whimpered and paced by the door, ears pricked, eyes trained on the woods, as though waiting for something to emerge. Briggs sat by the window, shotgun beside him, feeling foolish for needing it, but terrified not to have it. As night fell, fog crept low across the ground. Curling around the fence posts like ghostly fingers, and faint whispers drifted in with the mist. Briggs barricaded the doors, whispering shaky prayers he hadn't uttered in decades, and Rusty pressed close, trembling with a fear Briggs had never seen in him. Around midnight, the scratching began again, louder this time, coming from multiple directions, circling the house like predators testing a weak spot. Briggs clutched the shotgun, heart hammering, but the scratching suddenly stopped. Silence fell so heavy it felt suffocating. Rusty's ears shot up. Briggs slowly peeked through the window and nearly collapsed. The twisted elm, the very tree whose bark Rusty had torn away, was now closer to the farmhouse. At least 20 feet closer. Trees do not move. Trees do not uproot themselves. But the elm stood exactly at the edge of the yard, its trunk swollen, its bark rippling visibly as if something underneath struggled to push through. In the flickering moonlight, Briggs saw a familiar shape, Rusty's own face pressed faintly into the bark, eyes closed, mouth trembling. Briggs screamed for Rusty, spinning around to see if his dog was still beside him, and Rusty was there, but scratching wildly at the door as if trying to escape. Briggs grabbed him, desperate to protect him, but Rusty began convulsing in his arms, whimpering, choking, as if something inside him were being pulled away. Outside, the new tree pulsed. Briggs stumbled back, holding Rusty tight, whispering, "Don't you leave me, boy," over and over. But Rusty let out one final trembling breath and went completely still. Briggs froze, disbelief flooding him. But then he felt it. Rusty's body was cold, too cold. And in the window reflection, Briggs saw the tree again now, with Rusty's face fully visible in the bark. Eyes open, staring right at him, pleading silently as the forest whispered his name, coaxing him to come closer. Briggs dropped the shotgun, tears burning his eyes, realizing the truth too late. The forest didn't want to kill him. It wanted to keep him, to bind him, to turn him into one more whisper in its endless, hungry silence.